Well, I'm really happy to be here tonight and to have the topic be something that's very dear to my heart. It was 1966, and I got a phone call, and a young lady that I had been seeing called to say that she had broken her leg and would not be able to go to the gala ball that we were scheduled to go to, and that I should feel free to ask someone else. I said, I'm very sorry, and I knew that she was upset, and but I thought, no, God, I don't know who I'm going to take. So I talked to a buddy who was also going to the ball, and I said, I'm not going on a blind date. And he said, don't worry about a blind date. He said, just look, we were in a large crowd of friends. He said, why don't you ask Rebecca if she would like to go, because she knows us and we know her, and she knows that my friend had broken her leg. I said, that's a perfect answer. She's a charming young lady. Monday before the ball, her mother calls me and tells me that she's in the hospital with an emergency appendectomy.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, so here I am, 4 days before the most exciting night in Washington, D.C., the Cochran Ball. I'm dateless. And my friend came and said, oh, why don't you, I'm going to introduce you. I said, I am 27 years old. I am not going on a blind date. I haven't been on a blind date since I was 18, and I didn't like it then, and I'm not going to start now. So finally, one of my friends came up and said, there's a really nice girl that I work with. I said, I detest nice girls. There's always something wrong with it. And he said, no. He said, she's a lovely girl. And I said, I just don't want to go. He said, look, you had to buy all these tickets, so you're going to go. I said, all right. So he gives me her number. I call her. Oh my God, she was so snooty. I couldn't imagine what she was talking about. And in such a tone, was she European royalty? And because she has such a funny last name, I thought, oh my God. But I told her the story. She knew about the first date. She knew about the second date. And she said, I could really go. I'd like to do it. I think it could be fun. I said, wonderful. So that Friday, all day, I was so grumpy at work. I just didn't want to do this. And I just didn't know what to do. Anyway, I went home, took a shower, shaved, put on my tux, drove to her house. She had an apartment. The doorman buzzed me upstairs. She opened the door, and when I saw her face, I said, I'm going to marry her. Oh. She's the most beautiful woman I've ever seen in my entire life, and she still is.
Oh.
So, we go to the ball. She fit into all of my friends and all of the young women that were in our group. She was so charming. Everyone loved her. She and I knew how to dance together. And it was just some magic, And we like to tell the story that Marjorie Merriweather Post, a very rich woman from Post Toasties, was there with emerald earrings the size of quarters. And I said, I'm going to spin you around and dip you, and if one falls off, I want you to grab it. So we're dancing around, and Marjorie Post finally said, do I know you? So, evening's over with. I take her home. I kissed her on the forehead, told her she was a very, very good sport to do this, and that I stay in touch. So, like any bachelor, I had a convertible, I had my own house. I waited to Thursday, thinking, I call. How are you? Oh, I'm so glad to hear from you. Chat, 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 chat. I'm wondering if you'd like to go to dinner with me on Saturday night. Oh, I'm terribly sorry, but I have an engagement. Oh, didn't she realize we were going to get married? Live in Bethesda, have a picket fence, and 2 kids. I mean, didn't she get... I said, well, okay, fine. I said, we can stay in touch. She said, yes, I'd like that. So I wait till next Thursday. And I said, blah, blah, blah. We talked. And by this time, we knew each other enough that we have conversations about her work, my work. I said, I was wondering if you could have dinner on Saturday night. And she said, no, I'm so sorry, but I have an engagement. I said, okay, yeah. Let's stay in touch. She said, I like that. So on the 3rd Thursday, I called and I asked her to have dinner. She said, look, Tom, she said, you can't call me on Thursday and expect me to be free on Saturday. And I thought, why not? You expect me to go. So I said, all right, that's fair enough. I'm not stalking you, but I really liked you, and I liked the way we got along. And she said, well, so did I. And I said, well, how about 2 weeks from Saturday? You know what she said? Let me check my diary. So she said, yes, I'm free. So we went out for the second date. That second date, I saw her every day, either for coffee in the morning, lunch, go out to dinner.
Wow.
And on the 4th of July, some of my men friends had bought a cabin for hunting and fishing up in the Choctaw Mountains in Maryland. And it was so hot in Baltimore. I said, let's go up in the mountains, it'll be cooler. I go into the cabin. The first thing I do is build a fire. And we're sitting on the sofa, and she has her head on my shoulder, and it just came out of my mouth, will you marry me?
Oh.
And she said, yes.
Oh.
And I said, oh shit. So we decided we had to talk to, I called my parents in St. Louis, and we went up to Baltimore to meet her parents. Her parents didn't take kindly to me because I didn't go to Loyola or Hopkins. And her mother wanted bragging rights. And she said to me, what we know of you we like, but we don't know very much. And I said, well, here I am. And she said, well, is St. Louis west of Buffalo? And I said, yes, it's west from Buffalo. And she said, well, we don't know anyone there. And I said, well, no one there knows you. Mistake number 1. So, it's the garden party to announce our engagement on the 3rd of September. Her parents had a beautiful home and a beautiful garden. And it was 101 degrees, and everyone's drinking gin and squirts. Not gin and squirts. Yeah, gin and tonics. And they were all Czech, Bohemians from well, they looked me over, man. They were, one guy said, if you lay one hand on her, I'm going to kill you. Oh my God. And so one of the aunties was Irish, the only one in this whole vast of people besides me who wasn't Czech. And so she goes like this, she said, Tom, let's go here. And so we walked to the side of the garden, and I'm standing there, and she says, do you know what you're getting yourself into? And I said, no. I said, I love Karen. Oh, not Karen. Karen's wonderful, wonderful. She said, they're all crazy. So we went back, and I said to Karen, I can't wait until June for a wedding. Let's push it up. And she said, well, you have to talk to my mother. So I said, Mrs. Chisako, Karen and I have just talked it over, and we want to push it up. And she says, well, when do you want to push it up to? I said, November 26th. She said, I can't put a wedding together in 2 months. I said, what? And she looked at me and she said, is there a reason to it? I said, no, but if you wait until June, there may be.
Oh.
She put on, Karen's parents put on the most beautiful, beautiful wedding you'd ever want to see. When Karen came down the aisle, I couldn't believe that she was going to marry me. I was so overwhelmed that I broke all protocol, and when her father handed me her hand, I kissed her on the cheek, and her mother went, Number two. Anyway, Karen's just been the inspiration. I wouldn't be standing here today without her. And could I ask if we could have her stand? And this November 26th, we will be married 60 years.